Welcome to the TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to back to the talking. That's what we're doing today. We're going to be talking about saying no. Today, if I was going to title today's podcast, it would be, matter of fact, we are going to title this. You'll see the title in the link in the description. A good no is better than a bad yes. I was driving not long ago. It's been a little while, and thinking about it's never been difficult really for me in my life to say no. I mean, occasionally it's been tough to say no at times, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I was able to identify some of the reasons like why I didn't want to say no, and why I was observing other people around me that were always saying yes to everything, and like why no is so taboo almost. Last year we did a podcast last season that says when the Holy Spirit says no, and you can go back and check that one out. It's really good on no. But today I want to talk about a good no being better than a bad yes. I've been guilty, full transparency, in my life of giving bad yeses. Meaning I was at max capacity and someone said, "Hey, TJ, can you do so-and-so?" And I'd be like, "Yes." TJ, can you come lead this event? Can you come do music for this? Can you come speak at this engagement? And I could have already been maxed out on my time, overwhelmed in my schedule, all kinds of things. But I recognize I would still give a yes sometimes. And so I want to talk about today why no's are tough and why they're really dangerous. Like to say no, to make the decision to say no in your life is really tough. And going back to what I was saying, I used to say yes sometimes out of pride. And this is a bad yes. If I'm saying yes to something, like in my context, I used to lead worship and I would be asked to sing a lot of places, a lot of times. And I would always say yes. Like it was immediate yes. Like, yes, I will. Yes, I will. And really that had to do more with me wanting to be busy and me wanting to, at certain times, I would, full transparency, want to advance my own notoriety probably, or my, not clout, that would be a bad word, but just like to create more awareness that I was a worship leader and I wanted to lead people in worship to God. And so it could have been good, but because my pride was wrapped up in it, a lot of those yeses were actually bad yeses. And my self-worth was tied to the yeses. Like my self-worth was tied to the things I do. So if I say no, then it would be a shot at my pride and it would be a shot at my self-worth. And I felt like I have to say yes to this to have value. Like these people want me for this thing. So if I don't say yes and I tell them no, they're not going to like me anymore, right? There's this insecurity. They're not going to like me. They're not going to want me around or whatever the thing is. Like no's can be really, really tough. And I'm fortunate. I realize that I'm one of the fortunate ones that it's not incredibly difficult for me to say no. But even me, having that kind of temperament, have more times than not probably said yes when I shouldn't. And so today what I want to do is really unpack for you why no's can be beautiful and they can create really healthy boundaries in your life. And I think they can create healthier yeses. So saying no can be a really, really good thing. I believe that no is the pathway to good boundaries. If I know beyond a shadow of a doubt where I'm willing to go, what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do, and where I'm not willing to go, it helps me chart and navigate my life. And here's the thing. If you're in ministry, if you're in leadership, if you say yes to everything, right? Like if you say yes to every opportunity that comes along, if you say yes to every ministry, if you say yes to every open door, you'll never go through the ones you're supposed to. You'll be busy going through every opportunity and every door. So being able to really craft your no and know, okay, this is who I want to be. This is who God's called me to be. This is the kind of business that I want to lead. This is the kind of team that I want to have. This is the kind of ministry that I feel called to lead. When you can clarify the things that you want to say yes to, you can start offering some really beautiful no's. And what that does, it creates the right yeses. It takes you through the doors that you're supposed to go through and that you want to. Being able to identify your boundaries allows you to give the right yes and a good yes. rather than a yes just because you need a paycheck, or yes just because you feel social pressure, or yes just because you don't want to let someone down, yes because you don't want to disappoint someone. What would it look like if you really sat down with some of the things in your life? And especially, I'll say this, especially if you're a ministry leader. Like, man, at our church here at First Baptist Tifton, we have literally hundreds and hundreds of people that attend on a weekly basis. And I've been here 13 years, and I would say over the last 13 years, there have been probably hundreds of ideas that have come through the door. Hey, TJ, we need to do school lunches for kids. Hey, TJ, we need to buy books for the local library. Hey, TJ, like hundreds of things that are good ideas. But unfortunately, the unfortunate fortune is that saying no to a lot of things has allowed us as a church to say yes to the right things. And sometimes we get burnout. Sometimes we're spread too thin in our lives, even in our marriages and our relationships, because we're saying yes to so many things and no to nothing. We're overwhelmed, and we can't give anything in our lives a good yes. So you say, TJ, why are you're kind of harping on yeses and nos? Absolutely. Like, no is the pathway for you to have good boundaries. It allows you to establish, okay, this is as far as I'm going to go in one direction, or as far as I'm going to go in another direction. And being able to set up your boundaries and to set up your no, knowing the things that you're going to say no to, right? Like, it helps you chart the path of where you want to go, who you want to be, and what you want to create in life, leadership, and business. And it almost sounds like the phrase that we use all the time, life, leadership, and the gospel. Life, leadership, and business, like being able to say no is something that you need to cultivate, right? Like, because ultimately, being able to say no can and will protect your integrity. I'll tell you the story. This is kind of a wild story. And looking back, full transparency, if I knew now what I knew then, I would do the same thing, I'm sure. But I felt salty with myself for a little while. When I was in high school, I was a thespian. And I was a part of theater, and I loved acting. I loved drama. I loved doing voices. I mean, just impersonations. I loved all that stuff. And I tried out for this play, this show called The Robber Bridegroom. And our school was selected. Our high school was selected out of, there were 12 schools from the United States that was selected to go to Edinburgh, Scotland for a film festival. And I'd been following Jesus like a year and a half at this point in high school. And I'd cleaned up my language, which is, it doesn't make you, I don't think, any better or worse of a Christian necessarily to have perfect language or whatever. But that was a big thing for me. My language was pretty coarse and vulgar. It was disrespectful. And so that was something I was convicted in. So I cleaned up my language and cleaned up kind of some of the things that I was doing and taking part in and being a part of. And so I tried out for this play. And Mr. Davis, Robbie Davis was his name. He was our high school. He was an English teacher at our high school, but he was also over the theater department. Won like first place at state literary comp year after year, like 12 or 15 like state titles. I mean, the guy was amazing at drama. And he came to me privately after I auditioned, and this is what he said. And he said, TJ, listen, I want you to know you were up for the lead role, and I think you would be amazing at it. But before you auditioned for it, for that role specifically, he said, I think you would be great, and you would go to Scotland. He said, but I want you to know that there's some pretty rough profanity and some illicit acts that you'll have to pretend that you're doing in the play. And he said, and this is what he said, I've noticed that over the last, he said, something's different and has changed about you. And I know you're following Jesus now or whatever, doing this religious thing. He said, even your grades are different. He said, so I just want to let you know on the front end that if you're going to say yes to this, then that's what you're going to have to, those are some of the things you're going to be involved in. And so I said no, and I didn't try out for that part of the play. I did shift crew, some behind the scenes stuff, rolled around some boards or whatever, and I said no to that, and I said no to Scotland. And that no shaped in a lot of ways who I am as a I look back to that no of something like, who would say no to that? I look, even now as a grown man, I'm like, oh man, I could have just said a few bad words, right? Like I was just pretending doing whatever, but it was like, no, like who I wanted to be and my character and some of the things I'd signed up for with Christ, like that no is really, really formative and important. And what I look back on, I see that no, if for no other reason. I'm not sure if Mr. Davis was a believer. I don't think he was a believer. He wasn't necessarily incredibly hostile towards the gospel or to faith. I think he hated hypocrites, which he and I would get along about that for sure. But if for nothing else, when I look back, I'm like, man, that one no, at least in his life, provided evidence that there are people that love Jesus more than the stage, and people that love Jesus more than the opportunity. So I think no's can be really formative and transformative. And when you settle on your no's, your yeses will be unshakable when they are aligned with your values and your characters. Like that day, I mean, I'll never forget that day. We sat down about 3/4 of the way back in the Lee County Theater, the auditorium, and he had this conversation with me, and my no was unshakable because my yes to Jesus and my values and my convictions was absolutely unshakable. And being able to say no to that began to chart some of the things that I would say yes and no to. I'll tell you another one really quickly before we get to really the last point today that I want to talk about and think about together as we have this conversation. But around Hurricane Katrina, I started writing some country music. And a couple of the songs got picked up, and people were like, people in Nashville were like, "Oh, TJ, these are really good," blah 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 blah. And they started throwing around money figures, and there was, as a relatively poor kid from South Georgia, hearing big numbers and money, I was like, man, this could be really cool and opportunity. And then the guy sat me down, and this is what he said. He said, TJ, for us to go to this next step, like what we really want you to do, we just want you to sing the bar scene. We want you. You're going to have to, for a season, you're going to have to sing the bar scene. You're going to have to stand on stage. You're going to have to sing songs, and they were going to be able to pick my songs and stuff. And what I realized is like I was going to be singing things that didn't align with my values and who I wanted to be. And there's nothing wrong. I love country music, especially '90s country music. Like give me a farm day and some '90s country music, and I'm in heaven, this side of heaven. All right, like I love it, but that's not. I knew that's not who God was calling me to be or what I was supposed to do with my life. And so I'll never forget. I was like, "Hey, man, nah." And I still remember the look on this dude's face. He looked at me. He was like, well, "Hold on a second. I'm telling you, there's opportunity. There's an open door. Like people long for this shot and this opportunity." And I was like, "Yeah, but I know I won't be able to live with myself doing something that I'm not called to do and something that I know God doesn't want me to do. Like I'm going to have to tell you no." And I literally said, "Nah, man, you can take me home now." And because the label had brought me to Nashville. They changed my hair color. They bought me all these expensive boots. It was wild, y'all. And they took me home. And a few weeks later, I was standing on a flatbed trailer in Dothan, Alabama, singing worship songs with about 30 people standing in front of me. And at that moment, I did think, what have I done? I left Nashville and came to the middle of the woods to sing about Jesus. But it was a great no. And I look at my life now really kind of as a case study and evidence of being able to say the right no's at the right time. If the things being asked of you don't align with your character and your value, what incredible doors can be open for you in the future if you say no to the right doors now. So it protects your integrity. Being able to say no protects your integrity. It keeps you from going to places and doing things that are going to compromise who you are and ultimately scar your life potentially. And really the last thing is that it preserves your energy, your times, and your time and your gift. This is something I'm learning. I don't know everything, and I don't know very much. I mean, you could go back through these podcasts, and almost all the cool stuff that I give you comes from somebody else. I'm going to quote somebody else. I'm going to read you scripture. It comes from God or somebody else, and other people get the credit for a lot of the cool stuff in my life. But this is what I'm realizing. At 38 years old, I'm coming to this reality that no might be one of the most important words that I can continue to work on and cultivate in my own life if I want to continue to have a good marriage, if I want to be a good dad, if I want to be a great leader and a good pastor. I could say yes to church stuff at such a pace that my kids grow up without knowing who I am. I could say yes to opportunities musically at such a pace that I neglect who I'm supposed to be as a pastor. I could give so many bad yeses and no good no's in such a way that I compromise my marriage, and my wife knows that I love the church and I'm married to the church, but I'm a void in her life. And so being able to say no and cultivate a good no will preserve my energy and my time and my gifts. It'll keep me from burnout, right? It'll keep you from burnout. It'll keep you from morphing into someone else's desired version of who you're supposed to be. It'll keep you from offering half a gift. I think about this. I've said no to some things recently, even in the last year, because I recognize that if I say yes to this thing, whatever it is, I'm gonna offer half a gift. Like I'm gonna offer half a sermon, or I'm gonna offer my wife half my attention, right? Or offer my kids half of my focus. And so being able to cultivate good no's in our lives will preserve our energy, our time, and our gifts, and allow us not to burn out, because no one wants a bad yes, right? No one wants an overpromise and an underdeliver. No one wants a yes that's birthed out of pride or our insecurities. And I promise you this, they might not like it in the moment, but people would prefer a good no over a bad yes any day. I'm that way as a leader. I ask things of people sometimes and they say, no, TJ, we can't do that. Or no, we don't need to do that right now. Or just flat out, no. And I prefer as a leader a good no rather than a yes, because someone's like, oh, is he going to like me anymore? Or is he, or am I going to get in trouble or whatever? No, man, I love a good no over a bad yes. So here's my encouragement today, wrapping up our time together. Matthew chapter 5, 33 through 37. I want to read this to you, and I want you to think about it with me. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, or it is the throne of God, for it is the throne of God, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. So check this out. In this context, right, people would be like, I swear on my mama or whatever, like I swear on my Pokemon collection. I don't know. I don't have one of those. I don't even know why that came to my mind, but you know what I'm saying? You might swear on whatever. I swear on my baseball card collection. And what they would do, like the ultimate swear would be like, well, I swear to God, right? Or I swear on Jerusalem. And Jesus is saying, no. Like, I'll just finish what he's saying because this is really cool. Do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. So Jesus is saying, like in this text, he's like, don't worry about swearing to God or swearing to Jerusalem or even swearing on like your Pokemon collection or whatever it is, right? Swearing on your favorite guitar. He says, let what you say be simple yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. It's so interesting. What Jesus is saying is this, like, man, if you're going to say no, let it be a good no. If you're going to say yes, let it be a solid, consistent, faithful yes. Like, don't try to increase the degree of yeses and nos, and I swear on this, it means this much. Like, no, just give a yes or a no. And listen, I don't know who this podcast is for, and I often pray over you guys as you listen and you pull through this information and sift through the episodes, because they're all unique and different, but I always believe they're for somebody. And so if you're that person today who your life, you feel trapped because you can't say no. You've been living in an existence of codependence because you feel insecure that you can't say no to a certain somebody or a certain something, or a no has become really tough for you, or your pride's wrapped up in it, and you feel like you have to say yes to everything, and your busyness has become a badge of honor. Man, here's my encouragement. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, and let those yeses and nos be aligned with the heart of God and what he has for your life. Listen, I'm always grateful, incredibly grateful, that you would spend just a little bit of time with me thinking about life, leadership, and the gospel. And today, as we think about giving a good no rather than a bad yes in our lives. We love you guys. See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast, where we talk about life, leadership, and the gospel. If you enjoyed this episode, share with a friend. For more content, follow us on Instagram and YouTube. If you have any questions you would like to ask TJ, whether it is about life, leadership, or the gospel, you can email those to tjmauldinleadershippodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening, and we hope you join us again on the TJ Mauldin Leadership Podcast.